Thanks.
Okay, sounds good. Well, welcome everybody to this webinar produced by the Center for Renewable Energy Advanced Technological Education. Greetings both to those of you that are viewing in real time, as well as those that may be watching this as a recording. Today we are presenting the second of our webinars based on our spring innovation call for a spring call for innovations, I should say. Our speaker today, if I can go ahead a slide, is Dr. Jennifer Clemons from Delaware Technical College. Dr. Clemons is the Department Chair for Energy Technologies, where she oversees the energy management, renewable energy, solar, and building automations systems programs. She has been teaching full-time at the collegiate level since 2009. She primarily teaches the alternative energy and solar courses for the program, in addition to data analytics and, as you will hear today, energy physics. Dr. Clemons is a North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners, certified PV photovoltaic instructor, and editor for Solar Today. She has led study abroad courses for alternative energy technologies to Denmark, Switzerland, and Japan. She has a master's degree in energy and geo-environmental engineering from Penn State and a doctorate in educational leadership from the University of Delaware. And today, Jennifer is going to share with us a little bit of information on some simulation tools that she has used with her students. So with that, I will turn over the mic and the screen to Dr. Jennifer Clemons.
All right, hello everyone, thanks for coming. So today I'm going to talk about what worked and some of the stuff that didn't work this past fall semester in our energy physics class. So a little bit about Delaware Tech. I'm coming from Delaware Tech. The mission of Delaware Tech is putting students at the center of everything we do. So we're really focused on student-centered learning here. So the title of my presentation was What Worked and Didn't in Energy Physics, and a little bit about this class to start. The history of energy physics, probably not a class most of you all have in your colleges or your schools. Really, when I came into the college in 2011, we had a choice between two physics classes. And one was the conceptual physics, and this was kind of the physics for teachers. There really wasn't a whole lot of thermodynamics in there, which what our energy students really needed. But the math requirement, as you can see, was pretty low down here. They call this physics for teachers. Or we had the choice between general physics 1. And that's what a lot of us in STEM fields, this is what we took when we were in college. But it had a much higher level math requirement. As you can see down here, it requires Math 180, which is a higher level math and is required in our course, in our program. So we thought this was really going to be a gatekeeper course for us in the energy department. So we developed this new course, this energy physics. This was like the baby bear physics that was just right. And as you can see, we really focus on energy principles, including energy conservation, thermodynamics, energy efficiency, in addition to our traditional Newtonian physics that everyone has, the laws of motion and so on. But we kept the math low here, that we were really focusing on more on the conceptual side of it rather than calculating, you know, the acceleration of different things like that, those kinds of things. So we really want to get the fundamentals there of thermodynamics in, because our physics class is a prereq for our HVAC classes and our later in our energy program. So this energy physics class, this is typically taken in the first semester for students that are going full-time daytime. So as a lot of first semester classes are, we have our students at all different levels. This past fall, we had 9 students that were enrolled in it in the beginning. It was about 50-50 between first-time college degree seeking students, and some of our students were, the other half was probably, they've been in the program a little bit and they're taking 1 or 2 classes. The original design of this course was, it's flipped. We developed it around a lot of free online resources, readings and videos. We don't require a textbook for this class because there's so much material out there anyway. Originally, we designed this for the class time is really spent working on lab assignments. And as we all saw last spring and in the fall, that kind of went out the door, that working on campus on the lab part was really a challenge. So as I mentioned, this class, we had 9 students that started the course. About half of them had been in the program for a little bit of time, but more than half of these students were working full time. A lot of these students had children, they were older students. A lot of these students in this class, they were working full time, they had students or had children at home, so it was really kind of a challenge. So since March 2020, everything is virtual. So this class was originally designed for us to be on campus working on lab assignments, and we were told, all right, in the fall, everything's virtual. You need to flip all your classes. Everything needs to be virtual. So this was really a challenge for me going into the fall. So let's see here. I want to launch this poll. How did your remote learning go? You guys see this poll?
Yeah, we can see it, Jennifer.
Okay. So please take a minute to go on, take that poll. So a little bit about me. When I started in August, I thought, man, I got this, right? I got this. August, I was all prepared for everything. And then September kind of changed my opinion on things. So I wasn't even going to apply for this. I recommended a couple of my colleagues to apply for this innovation in teaching, but I felt like, man, this was rough. I have nothing good to share. It was really, really rough. And it looks like you guys thought the same thing too. It was rough, but we made it through. That was my takeaway from most of my colleagues, that, yeah, it was rough, but we finally made it. If anybody chose piece of cake, I was going to say you should be given this presentation, right? But yeah, it was really challenging, and I really thought I was prepared. And then the first couple classes, and I went, oh crap, this does not work. So some of the things I found that didn't work: using the same labs and changing a few things. I went into this saying, hey, we have this lab manual, like this 50-page lab manual of all the activities we did on campus when we were face-to-face. All I have to do is change a couple things. Well, those of us that tried that, we know it doesn't work, right? It ended up being easier to start everything from scratch. So I started using the same lab and changing a few things, and I found it was a heck of a lot easier to just throw everything out and see what I could find and start building from scratch. Scrapping the original idea really helped me explore what was new out there, what was available, and actually found some new things that work better in some places. All right, so what also didn't work was talking too much. So all of us have been teaching via Zoom, and just like right now, all your screens are black and I can't see your facial expressions. And that's really tough for people that have been teaching for a long time, right? I can't see if the lights go on in your eyes, if you get it or you don't get it, or if you muted me and you're doing something else. I don't know what's going on. So sometimes I'm very guilty of talking way too much rather than letting the students kind of guide it. So this was really a challenge for me. I tended to fill that silence for the first couple weeks. And what I need to do is just be quiet and let the students kind of unmute themselves and ask the questions. And again, not waiting long enough for the students to answer. We're kind of used to that flow of how long to wait before you chime in. And a lot of times I just feel like Bueller, right? Waiting for that answer for the students to answer. But that's something with a challenge we really need to do, because the student needs to go unmute themselves and really question whether or not they're going to speak up in the class. And finally, the last thing that did not work for me at all was doing the same lab and having the student watch me. So while the students weren't allowed to come on campus, I could go on campus. And so some of the labs I thought, oh, I'll just do the same thing and the students can watch me. And that's my first example of what really didn't work. So this was a lab. I didn't have a whole lot of pictures because I was so busy. So this is an insulation lab. Some of you might have done something similar before. You take hot or cold water and you wrap it in different insulation materials. Here I was using foam, a scarf, a cooler, foil, different things to measure that temperature over time. Well, you know what this did for me? It kept me really, really busy because here I'm testing 6, 7 different things and the students aren't doing anything. So I'm taking a temperature measurement every 5 minutes while the students didn't do anything. And I remember putting so much time into planning this and again to go on campus, get all the materials, put everything together. And I came home that night so devastated that this lab crashed and burned. I came home and I said to my husband, I feel like a first-year teacher. And the best thing that happened to me last semester was my husband said to me, you are a first-year teacher. This is the first time any of us has done this way. Nobody's taught like this. So it is just like being a first-year teacher again. And once he said that, and I really thought about it, and I thought back to my first year teaching and how every class period I was like, just getting through it, right? All right, just planning ahead just to get through that next class, and how tired I was all the time. I was like, oh, I am a first year teacher. I'm doing as best I can. You know, some stuff crashes and burns. Some of it goes all right. So I kind of relaxed a little bit and said, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. And that's when I started admitting it to the students too. Like, I don't have it all figured out. Sometimes it just crashed and burned. And once I kind of got over that, things started to go a lot better. So this did not work. The students, all they did was write down the numbers that I collected in the lab. I could have done this a lot of different ways, and I'm sure there's a simulation out there that would be a lot more interesting than watching me take a temperature reading. So here's a lab that almost worked. It was a similar type of setup where I went on campus and I'm doing a calorimetry lab. So this is where you're burning the peanut. I had a peanut, a crouton, some popcorn and so on. And I was measuring the temperature difference as we burn it. And we're comparing that to what's on the nutrition facts. And this worked better because the students had something to do. There were a lot of calculations that the students needed to do after I collected the data. What happened here too, one day, one of the students came a little bit late and I had already gone through one example calculation. I was doing something, getting the next one set up or something. And someone came late and asked, well, what are we doing here? How do I solve for this? And because I was doing something else, the other students helped him get caught up. So that really helped things. Now, why I'm saying it almost worked, I wouldn't have done, if I were to do this again, if this is how this class runs again in the future, I wouldn't do all the data collection live with the students. I don't think they got anything more out of me doing this 4 or 5 times with different, you know, a crouton, a peanut, and whatever. Other than I let the students pick what object we were going to burn. I would have collected the data ahead of time because that seemed to go a little bit better. But it was nice to see it once. I'm sure there's a ton of videos out there as well, but it was nice to see it once. But it, like I said, it almost worked because on this worksheet here, you can't see all the items. I was only filling out like 2 columns and the students had to fill out the rest. So while the experiment was going on, they had calculations to do and other things to do. So that's really what this insulation was lacking, was they're just writing down numbers. There was like, you know, subtraction to do. It wasn't a whole lot to do. And here they're trying to compare the energy density that we calculated with this calorimeter versus what's actually on the nutrition facts and what's the percent error. So there are a lot of things that they needed to do here. So like I said, this almost worked. And again, if I were to do this again, it probably would work. And going back to that first year teacher analogy, I've never felt super comfortable with a course until I've taught it 3 times. So, you know, that first time you're teaching it, you're like, oh man, just trying to make it through that, get it through each day. The second time, well, you're fixing the things that work. So trying to think back, well, I've done it once, you know, if I do it again, it'll be a lot better. But by the 3rd time, hopefully we don't have to do it virtually for the 3rd time, but it's going a lot better. So what really worked, this was a gas laws activity that actually really worked. again, I'm in the lab, the students are not. So what I have going on over here, this is a can of compressed air that you use to clean computers or so on. And we've attached a thermocouple to it so we can see as you're pressing the button, you're seeing the temperature decrease, right? It gets colder. We're collecting data on a couple different things. Actually, that's what the iPad was for, because I was using this Pocket Lab to collect the data. And actually, this kind of worked really good because as you see, I have the webcam looking at that. So normally whoever's holding the iPad, they're the one that can see what's going on. Whoever's holding, you know, here's the multimeter with the temperature thermocouple on there, they're the only people that can see those things that are going on. Over here, this is a really cool device. It was built by one of our instructors that retired using a Raspberry Pi. So this bottle here, we have our sensors in there, and we're measuring our pressure, temperature. So here we can see a relationship. As we increase the temperature, we can actually see the pressure go up, because that relationship is not as easy to see as normally temperature and volume. You can visualize with a balloon, but we can't see the pressure. So again, whoever's holding the box, they can see it, but here it's on the screen, so everyone can see it. So that was kind of cool. And this worked out, again, this worked out well too, because when I was setting up the lab, I put the thermocouple in backwards. So I tested everything. And that really reminded me to like make the mistakes that the students would make, right? That I need to make these mistakes. I don't want to set up the lab and everything be perfect, because that's not how it would have been if they were here on campus. There would have been a mistake. So as you know, so I left it backwards so that way they could see the temperature go up, but you hold the can, you can actually feel it's cold. So, oh, what happened here? Oh, the thermocouple's backwards. All right, we need to switch that. And finally, down here in this picture, this is the crush the can demo. You put a little bit of water in a soda can, you let it boil off, and you flip it over, and it compresses. So that as the steam compresses, the can crushes. And if anyone's ever done this in front of an audience, of course, something goes wrong, and the first one's a dud. That happens. But what was cool about this is, you know, there's a ton of videos. I could just show a video. And again, it didn't go right the first time, because it doesn't go right the first time it happens. But why this lab really, really worked was they were also doing things behind the scenes. So they had an assignment that they were using some of these simulations I'm going to show in a minute. They were using those simulations while I was doing these different things. And hey, the first can, it didn't crush. Well, now I had to try the next can, and it takes a little bit of time. So while we're waiting for the water to boil, they were working on some other things. So this one worked really well. This is another lab that worked really well. And why this worked really well is now I decided I'm going to take the data ahead of time. I collected all the data ahead of time in this case, because having them watch me change the multimeter to take the voltage and current is not really an effective use of our time. So I collected the data ahead of time. I gave them one example of the setup. I'm gonna share I gave them one example of what I was doing. And as you can see, I have a kind of setup over here. So I did it once so they could see it. And then I just gave them the rest of the data. So the point was for them to do the calculations, understand what was happening, rather than just watch me, you know, take a lot of samples. So that worked really, really well. It was a lot easier for me to collect all the data one Friday afternoon when there was not an audience. So it only took me a couple minutes to collect all the data. Some of the stuff here, the light levels and lux, because, you know, I'm working at home, and that's what the meter I had was. I forgot my Daystar meter in the lab, so I didn't have that. But that worked really, really well. Some of the lab activities that I used, and I would encourage you all to use, hopefully most of us have heard of PFET, Interactive Simulations for Science and Math. Obviously, I had to rely on this a lot more than I have in the past. We did use this quite a bit in the past, but I use a lot more of them. Another simulated lab activity, I don't know if you've all heard of that. It's called Energy 2D, and it's interactive heat transfer simulations. This is from NSF. Very, very cool. A lot of really good things that you can't just show, you can talk about in the classroom, but it's nice that you can simulate it. So this is an example of the Energy 2D software. Now you need to download it. So the last time I taught this course, we were able to use it doing their web version, I think using Java. I did have to tell my students, I told them a week ahead of time, like, hey, I need you all to download this, make sure you test it out, make sure you're able to do it for the class time. A couple students had problems with Java and so on, but we were able to work that out one-on-one. Some other simulations that normally I would do this in our lab face-to-face, you know, we'd use batteries and light bulbs, the simple circuits. A lot of us have done this using Christmas lights and LEDs. Obviously, I had to rely on this a lot more, but it was kind of cool using the PFET simulation instead because we can make a lot more mistakes and it's not requiring me to replace the fuses in the multimeter all the time and so on. So it's kind of cool in the PFET simulation when you cause fires and stuff and, you know. Some other simulations that I weighed in on more heavily, the pendulum. And usually I make the students build this. And I realized we wasted a lot of time building the pendulum when we can just use the simulation. I mean, I like to do hands-on and everything, but what was the point of that to measure the distance and so on? But here, what's really nice with this one is you can turn gravity off, you can turn friction off. And so, like I said, this is a conceptual class. So we really spent more time looking at these graphs and what does this mean? If it's all kinetic energy, at what location on the pendulum is it? If it's all potential energy, where is it? If it's a mix, where is it? This one, because we have some friction, this graph is different because it has friction. So you can see that E thermal start to go up to the point it totally stops. So we are able to spend more time on the concepts rather than, you know, building a pendulum and measuring all the things. So this simulation was really helpful. Some new things I learned. I found a new density simulation. Let me see if I can pull that over here. This one, it was just really, this is an easy lab to do. It's a fun lab to do, but if you can't be on campus, I don't want to have them watch me just measure different things. So I found this one. And I found a really good heat capacity simulator, but it runs on Flash. So I don't know what the answer is for that right now. All right. So how did the class go? Like I said, we started with 9, we ended with 7, and I was a little nervous how it was going to go because, again, I really struggled with this class. I was worried about how the students were going to, you know, think about it because there were definitely some rough days in this class. So when I pulled my course evals a couple weeks ago, I was actually really surprised. So we started with 9, we ended with 7, only 3 people actually finished it. But I was nervous because there were some challenging students in there. But some of the things I really liked was the semester was a tough one. Being virtual removes the interaction between students, teachers, and groups. Professor Clemons did an amazing job. You know, I was really pleasantly surprised that how well they responded to it towards the end. So some of the takeaways I want to share based on my experience, celebrate small wins. Just taking the time to acknowledge things are hard and things don't work out. Like some of those labs, man, it was rough. And personally, it was a rough semester. And I will say with my colleagues and I, you know, every Thursday or Friday, we're like, all right, we made it one more week, right? There's a taco truck that was out here in my neighborhood on Thursdays. And there were a lot of Thursdays that we went and got tacos and cocktails because it was rough. So I tried to celebrate that with the student. Yay, we made it through another unit. Yay, we made it through this project. Yeah, all right. Yeah, one more week, we made it done. So just taking that a little bit of extra time saying you did a good job, because that was something, you know, I wish I heard that a little bit more. And I think the students wish they heard that a little bit more. I know you're working hard. I know, you know, the students had children at home too, working full-time and children at home. Man, that's crazy. That's a lot to handle. So celebrating those small things and seeing them and just acknowledging like, hey, good job. Waiting a long time for responses. Like I said, it is tough. You just got to take the time and wait 30 seconds or so on and getting used to that silence. I've learned I'm not chatting with the students. So those of us got on for this Create webinar, we were all on early and we were chatting, but most of our students don't log on until like the exact minute they're supposed to, right? So I kind of have to make sure I'm like saying hello to everyone and trying to pull them out of their shell a little bit and ask them questions about their life or their other classes or what's going on, because normally I'd be setting up my computer before class and people wander in and I can chit chat with them. But, you know, the little black squares and, you know, no camera and on mute, it's really hard to engage with the students. So I'm trying to take a conscious effort, especially with those really quiet students. I hold my office hours right before class and I use the same Zoom link. I have found that some of the quieter students do not want to ask a question, and they don't normally want to ask a question in front of the classroom, but via Zoom, it's even worse. So I've had some students that will come on early every time. They usually ask questions that everyone has, and then I will probably share it beforehand, but they kind of do better with that one-on-one. So some of my quieter students have done really well just meeting before class, just a couple minutes to work out some things. And along that same line, breakout rooms are your friend. I've had a lot of students that will just say, hey, can I go in a breakout room? Because they don't want to ask in front of their classmates. And so I try and encourage that, like, yeah, if they're not comfortable asking in front of everyone, let's go in a breakout room. And, you know, even doing assignments in a breakout group so they're in a smaller group and can try and force that interaction with the students. Multiple cameras to show multiple views. I know Jim gave us a presentation on that yesterday or a couple days ago, but again, I have my lab set up over here and that has been really, really helpful with the multiple cameras. And also that way I can show different things on, if I'm going to write something or so on. You saw in some of my lab pictures. And finally, the last thing I want to share is this thing called an Xpen. So one of my students, actually in the physics class this semester, about a month into the semester, he asked me how I was doing a problem. And I was writing on my iPad with a stylus. And he's like, don't do that. He's like, this is called an Xpen. He works for a CAD company and he was always drawing on blueprints. And this is what he would do. So this is an example of a problem I might do in a class. And I literally can just write on. So here's an example of a problem. We can see that, correct? An example of a problem I might do in the class. And I can go into the Word and draw and choose whatever pen. And now I can write right on here. So if this is a problem I'm going to do in class, I would have 3.7 kWs, you know, 3.8 hours, 1 day, 365. And I really wish I had this at the beginning of the semester when we were doing the kinematics with the graphs of walking and distance over time, velocity over time, acceleration over time. But this has saved me a lot when you're doing problems, when you're trying to share something. What I was doing at one point was just writing on a piece of paper and putting it underneath a camera. But this has helped a lot. So if you know what problems you want to go over that day, I'll just set it up in a Word document. It works in a PDF or PowerPoint or whatever. But that has been really helpful too. So I believe that is all I have to say. So thank you for listening. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to, yeah, there you go. You paused your screen share. Perfect. Gabby, why don't we see if there's been any questions that have come through on the chat that you want to present to Jennifer?
So Jennifer, one question. You mentioned, so you also use a multi-camera system. Could you briefly tell us a little bit about your multi-camera system? I know James talked about his, and I don't know if yours is yours really similar to that. I don't know if people were on the webinar that we had on Wednesday, but could you tell us just a little bit about that?
So yeah, so I have over here, now you can see my lab setup, right? So I have a bench over here, and whatever I have over here, you can see it, right? And
Yes.
when I was doing problems, sometimes before I had this Xpen thing, I actually just would in a Sharpie, so it's bright, you know, something like that. And now I can flip the camera. Is it backwards for you guys?
No, that looks right side up.
It looks backwards to me, but that's something with the weird. It looks backwards for me, but yeah, you can flip that or so on. But what my camera setup, let me change my camera back, is very low tech.
Hey, low tech works.
It's just
Yeah.
the webcam that Delaware Tech bought. We all have the same webcam, whatever cheapo they got from Staples they got to deal with. But yeah, we just requested a bunch of extra webcams. I borrowed Jim's longer USB cord, but so I can have it connected. But in Zoom, you can go back and forth. So you can really quickly, you can, as many cameras as you have. I only ever use 2. And sometimes I would have my laptop over here, so it would be a different user. So I just rename it to lab setup or something like that if I was doing something over here.
Okay, oh, that's great. We had a question about the XP pen. Is it a pen or is it also a pad? So is
It is the same XP pen. It is a pad. It's a USB. Now there's a cheaper version. One of my instructors got it. It was about $30, and he was like, "Yeah, it was a little cheaper." This one, I think I paid $70, and it's a little cheaper now than when I got it in September. But this is kind of a wireless pen, and it writes just on this pad. So there was a little bit of a learning curve with it. You know, you're not going to plug it in and, you know, teach class with it in 20 minutes. So you do want to play around with it for a little bit. A couple of my early classes, I got everything to work. And then, I went and ate, you know, had dinner or whatever before class. And then I was like, oh crap, I can't figure out what was going on. But it doesn't work with everything. It works with PDFs and Word documents the best. I do everything in Google, and it doesn't like Google Slides. So.
Okay. That's
Found that
helpful
out the
because
hard
a
way.
lot of people use Google, so that's good information.
Yeah,
to
I
know.
found that out the hard way, and it was like, then it likes PDFs. Like I said, it was a student who works as a CAD designer, and he was like, yeah, we do mock-ups on all the things. He's like, why are you trying to write on a stylus on your iPad and the whiteboard function? Because then you only have this much, not a whole lot of room. So it is pretty nice, you know, it does write like a normal one. Like I said, there's a cheaper one that one of my other instructors got that was only about this big, and it doesn't line up so nicely with your screen. So this, I mean, I can sit on my lap and write, you know, and you can go up, I mean, if you do photo editing or anything, you can go up to really expensive, whatever, but I think they're down around $50, and my college bought it for us, so.
Jennifer, I had a question about the simulations that you mentioned. I know a lot of our Create teachers use the PhET simulations. I've used them with my own students. They're great for working with circuits and stuff. But you also mentioned the Energy 2D simulation, and that's one I'm not as familiar with. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that and how it works and where we might get it from.
Yeah. I meant to, and then I have too many things open. So let me share my screen again. So there we go. So these were all the simulations I brought up. So this is, I mean, if you Google Energy 2D, this is what you're going to get, the Concord Consortium. So you used to be able to pick and choose whatever you want, but it's all free. So I would download all simulations. And here's some examples of what different things you can see on here. But once you download it and install it, this is what it looks like. 2 monitors. There we go. So this is the convection conduction. So it's kind of cool. I can't use the run button because
when you're
Sharing
screen sharing, it might not function. Yeah.
yeah. Let me move this thing out of the way. All right, there we go. All right, so this, you can run this, but what's nice is you can insert thermometers wherever you want them. You can insert heat flux. You can insert all different things. Anemometers, yeah. But if you go to under examples, they're not labeled that nicely, so you kind of have to play around with them to see what different things, radiation in a box. So if we hit run, what's going to happen here? So kind of there's a lot of different things that are going on, a lot of different examples. And like I said, it's all free. So a lot of this conduction convection is hard to like visualize without, we know this, right? We know that what's going on here with the spoon, the wooden spoon versus a metal spoon is an example. That
I can see where this would be really good for teaching students fundamentals of heat transfer.
Yeah. So, I mean, we kind of know this intuitively, but then it's nice that we can see it. We can put some thermometers there. We know the metal spoon, you're going to burn yourself, but now we can see how much longer it takes for the heat to conduct through the spoon, the different types of spoons. But there's a lot of cool stuff out there. We did a little bit with it in the past, but what was nice, you can really expand on it. So you can spend a lot of time discussing, you know, any one of these simulations.
Well, that sort of visualization, I think, will also help students when they get to more advanced classes where they're using infrared cameras and things like that to actually image rooms in the building and that sort of thing. I like that. I'm going to have to play around with that for my own class. I can already see some applications for that in the course I teach. So, yeah,
the challenge I had, because before, when you're on campus, you know what software is on it, on all the laptops, so you can just have them. So that, I mean, that was a bigger learning curve than I thought it should have been. Like, hey, I need you to download this. We're going to have it in class. But it is a first year class, so we run into those in our first year.
Yeah. And you're right about the flash thing. That's going to be an issue for a lot of instructors that have been using, you know, online resources that were built with flash and have had them as part of their course for many years. And now all of a sudden that's not supported anymore. So
yeah, I asked Gabby, I was like, hey, this was a really cool simulation. I don't think I've been having pictures of it. So
yeah. Well, listen, I think we're almost at the end of our time here. So thank you so much for your presentation, Jennifer. And thank you for the folks that are tuning in or are watching this via recording. If you're interested to learn more about any of our future webinars or other events, I'd invite you to check out the CREATE website. It's www.createenergy.org. And also kind of check back from time to time, because I think we'll probably have another of these calls for innovations to solicit more teaching ideas. We've gotten a lot of good things this past week to share with the community, and hopefully we'll have many more. So with that said, I'll wish everybody a good afternoon and a good weekend. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Thank you, Jennifer.
thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Great presentation.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Great job.